Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Roku and Pod TV's World Edition. And on this show, we bring you news from all around the world. We talk about global affairs, innovation, an increasingly turbulent and political world. And I greet you live from the all-American city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States. Speaking of North Carolina, yesterday our governor gave his final State of the State address, Roy Cooper. He's been mentioned as a potential presidential candidate, and he delivered a strong message that the state of North Carolina is strong. But the highlight of the evening, or the interesting development of the evening, was the Republican response by Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the first Black lieutenant governor, whose fiery, charismatic personality surprised a lot of folks. And he was on message, playing to his base, a Trump-backed candidate that is most likely clear the field to win the Republican nomination for governor. It'll be an interesting race, and if he wins, he'll be the first Black governor elected in North Carolina history. All eyes are watching this race very closely as he is running against Josh Stein, the handpicked successor by the Democrats to succeed Governor Roy Cooper. Now, today is March 7th, and we have a couple of things we're going to talk about. Ukraine is still fighting to hold an embattled eastern city. President Zelensky said last night that Ukraine will not retreat from Bakhmut, even though Russian forces have nearly surrounded it. Bakhmut holds little strategic significance, but capturing it would be a symbolic win for the Russians. 4 U.S. citizens were kidnapped in Mexico, the city of Matamoros, across the border from Brownsville, Texas. Mexico's president said they were caught in crossfire between groups. The FBI is working with Mexican law enforcement to make sure they can get through this issue and get them safely returned. It also turns out when we talk about abortion in the Supreme Court, Walgreens has announced they will not sell abortion pills in some states where they're legal. Alaska, Iowa, Kansas, and Montana, where the pharmacy has faced legal threats. California protested the decision yesterday. Medication abortions now account for about 50% of legal abortions in the U.S. A federal judge could rule at any moment in this case. Finally, the Pentagon and FBI researched facial recognition street cameras. The agencies worked with academic researchers to develop software that could quickly analyze footage from public areas, according to documents released as part of the lawsuit. My final message today, before we begin the show, and I'll probably have to leave a few minutes early, is artificial intelligence. This last Sunday on 60 Minutes was a fascinating show about Bing, Microsoft's artificial intelligence, the counterpart to Bing's Sydney, which seems to be developing a personality of its own, and also ChatGPT. What was interesting is in the interview by Lesley Stahl, it came out that many of the ChatGPT things that come out are wrong. They actually, did a test and asked the machine if Kevin McCarthy was going to do a filibuster to stop gun control. And then the ChatGPT, within a matter of minutes, came out and made it sound like it was exactly the real news. This has led many people to be concerned in the industry of whether or not there should be a regulatory body similar to the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, or the Federal Drug Administration for digital technology. When asked this question on 60 Minutes, Brad Wilson, surprisingly, the president of Microsoft, said that he would be in favor of this kind of standards. It is quite scary that companies have been able to launch these artificial intelligence technologies without thinking about the ethical ramifications of such technologies, and also the dangerous impact it could have on not knowing what is true, what is not true. Things are hard enough as it is with the social media platforms we have in today. It's going to be interesting to see whether the United States Congress takes action on these issues, but I think this is an important issue to talk about on World Edition, wherever you are in the country or around the world. We're going to go ahead and get started. We welcome you to our show for an engaging and lively discussion. With me today is my co-producer, Mark Lee, radio celebrity in the region of North Carolina Triangle, and other guests who will be joining us today. Good morning.
We got
Don't we
Dan
have
working.
Dan
Hey, good morning.
I think Nick Pavetta is going to be joining us as well, and I think I saw Shaquille here not that long ago also, and hopefully he'll be popping in along with Lee Newton Rose. Hey, Nick, I do have a question because I was actually having this conversation with a friend yesterday. So, are you ready for your own personal assistant to be traveling with you? So, for example, if me and Dan get in a tit-a-tat, I won't have to answer the question. Y'all love oftentimes talking about how folks will put words in my mouth, but actually the chatbot will actually respond to whatever crazy things that Dan says and all along those lines. So I won't even have to.
Well, or crazy things that Mark says, right? I mean, seriously.
Oh, we won't need television people anymore, Mark. We're going to replace all of us with artificial intelligence. And it's just going to be chatting and discussing the issues of the day, as opposed to us discussing.
Hey, speaking, for those of you who live in North Carolina, did you watch the State of the State yesterday?
I watched part of it, in terms of that, but just like every.
Unfortunately, I mean, Josh Stein is one of my close friends, but
Yeah.
I do think Mark Robinson spoke very well, and I think he's going to be a very formidable opponent. I mean, even though he's said some crazy things, he makes Donald Trump like a moderate.
Oh, wait a second now. Crazy is, see, you're a liberal, right?
I'm not a liberal. This
Democrat,
guy, Dan,
yeah.
First of all, this guy has no experience to be governor of North Carolina. A couple of facts about Mark Robinson for people to know. He's been bankrupt
No, these are
3
facts
times.
according to you, right?
No,
Facts
it's not. He's been
according
bankrupt 3
to
times.
you.
He's not been able to hold a job for longer than, I think, a year or 2 years. He did serve in the military. He also has been defending pro-life, and it turns out that he paid for his girlfriend to get an
Biden
abortion.
never had a job. Yeah, I mean,
he sounds like a successful politician.
Sounds like
No,
a
but
successful
governor, you really
politician.
have to have experience. I mean, this guy doesn't have experience.
Well, I mean, Biden's president, he's never had any experience.
You don't need any experience. You don't need any experience on this job either. Apparently, Shaquille is hanging out at a nice little environment and all of that, but he's coming in to share his insights with us.
Hey, Shaq.
In the background and all of that, so he's having a good old time.
So, I'm actually in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
No way.
Oh, how nice.
No way. You're in Charlotte.
So I'm in Charlotte Airport, yeah. So I sent a message to Kimberly saying, hey, I'm here until midday.
Yeah.
But of course, I didn't realize how far Raleigh was from Charlotte.
Raleigh's not close to Charlotte. No,
Are you leaving from Charlotte to go somewhere else? Are you leaving
I'm
to
on
go
my way
back?
to New York. I'm on my way to New
York, and then probably Dubai. So
yeah.
Dubai.
So I'll wave at you guys as I'm flying over.
Let's see. We have some interesting news coming out of Australia. Oh, sorry. I spoke too soon. There isn't anything interesting coming out of Australia. So
well,
I'm sure there is.
I can assure you.
Yeah. Tell us interesting coming out of Australia. Well, I did find your thoughts on artificial intelligence to be quite interesting, Steve, because chess players are like into it because a lot of the best chess player in the world today is a bloody computer, that can beat everybody, including the world champion.
I mean, I think it's interesting, though. It was a really fascinating program, and I think it really makes people wonder. I mean, think about it. If you're in the pharmaceutical industry, you don't just offer a product without thinking about the consequences, the adverse effects, the clinical trials.
Sure they do.
Hey, sure they do. Look at
the COVID vaccines.
Look at the media. They throw stuff out.
But it had to go to the FDA, Dan. It had to go to the FDA.
They never were officially approved.
Yeah, the thing is, the technology industry historically announces things that aren't developed yet, saying, hey, we're going to have this out by then and all this other stuff. I mean, who does it? Elon Musk does it. Bill Gates did it. Or we're going to do this.
They've been warning us for like 30, 40 years that artificial intelligence is going to take over the world. And what I could say is, given how dysfunctional the people in charge are, I think it probably makes sense that most people will say, you know what, put the AI in charge instead.
It mimics artificial.
It couldn't get worse.
Artificial intelligence is a bad word for this. It should call mimic intelligence, because what they're doing is stuff that's been done for years. What you do is you aggregate certain sites, and then what you do is you go through the keywords and you put them together. They did that when, I don't know if you saw the trivia contest, when they had the IBM machine versus John Rutter and Ken Jennings. All the machine was doing was aggregating sites, assigning probabilities, and then spitting out an answer. So when you look at it, it's not really intelligent.
No, but the question I've got for both,
It's
hold on a
not
second,
conscious.
Nick,
It has
answer
no
the
ability
question.
to think.
No,
All it does is
Not sentient.
all we do is it looks like us. It's intelligent, but that it's not intelligent at all, and it's not artificial.
but Nick, the question
Right.
that has been raised, and it actually was a question that one of the companies that I have done work for and still continue to do work for, is that so far, and I did say so far because they might be changing this. Shaquille invests in a lot of things, so maybe he can tell me about what they're doing in that space. But so far in the testing world, they are not able to address nuances. Like if it's a question like, 2 + 2 = what? Most people know that is going to equal 4 unless you got some kind of crazy math going on and all in that space. But if it is a question that requires you to have an interpretation of what the answer can be, and it can be multiple interpretations that are correct, the bots aren't able to do that as effectively, because we actually got tested. We didn't know we were being tested, but we got tested against the bots, and we found out later that we were, and the humans actually somewhat won, because that's why I still have the job that I have, because they were like, there are certain answers that the human will understand, that the computer is not going to understand. But that is one of the issues, is human nuance.
Yeah, and they have limitations. They definitely, Mark, they have what they call language limitations right now. See, they can perform really well on things that are finite, like chess is 64 squares, and they
Right.
have finite moves, etc., and then they can calculate. All right, now, but when it comes to words, etc., and interpretation, they're really, really poor at it. And what they're doing, it mimics intelligence, because to a person who doesn't observe it correctly, it's pulling keywords throughout the internet, pulling things, aggregating them, and coming up with a structure. But it's definitely not artificial intelligence. True artificial intelligence would be able to move it to a different level and actually have the computer make modifications based on more information that comes in. And generally, it doesn't do that. So it more mimics intelligence, which would be the correct thing, not artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's
And-
not
and-
sentient. It's not
Yeah, right.
sentient.
And it's going to take
Not
a while
sentient,
before
right there.
it's going to take quite some time before people really do have to worry about their progress being made. But right now, this has nothing to do with that. These are just the tech companies trying to tout their stock. That's the bottom line.
So
the
speaking
reason-
of, hey, so hold on a second, Nick. Speaking of stock, I got to get you a stock that apparently did not do all that great, because they did great during the pandemic, but then they realized that they needed to, and Shaquille, you get a kick out of this. They needed to invest in getting property, because they had a lot of these lovely toys and everything. But then the pandemic stopped, so, or it's winding down, or whatever we want to call it. So now they've got to get rid of about $30 million worth of toys. So there's a company called Funko, and it was actually investing in this whole bobblehead kind of situation, because people were going out there getting bobblehead dolls during this time, and that Funko went and got warehouse storage fees. So they went and paid warehouse storage fees, bought some new warehouses, and the company saw demand for this vinyl pop culture figure, which ranged from everybody from LeBron James to Baby Yoda to Chitola. And they definitely had a spike
Chitola?
when the pandemic that it had to rent extra warehouse space. But with demand for its toys now waning, the surplus inventory has become a major money loser to the toy firm. So they have reported a loss of $47 million in the fourth quarter, down from a profit of $17 million in the same period of 2021. So they are eliminating $30 million worth of their popular toys. So they're just going to get rid of these 30 million toys. Who knows? They'll probably be in a landfill somewhere.
Well, what they should do firstly is donate them to charity, because they get a full tax deduction on that. Secondly, how much money did they make selling those bloody things?
Apparently, during the fourth quarter, they reported a loss of $47 million. They had a profit of $17 million in the same period of 2021. So yeah, apparently they made some killings during the time that they were out there. And like you said, they're little toys, little crazy things. But yeah, they made a killing during the pandemic.
Wow. What do you guys think about the situation in Mexico? You been keeping up with it?
Well, do tell us, Steve.
They kidnapped 4 people in Mexico. It's been interesting. Let me tell you real quickly what happened. It's real quickly. Yeah, the city of Matamoros across the border from Brownsville, Texas. 4 U.S. citizens were kidnapped, and they were caught in crossfire on Friday, but they're trying to return them back. But it's a very dangerous state of Mexico. So the FBI is working with Mexican law enforcement agencies. So not another crisis going on the southern border. So just what we need in America.
Those nasty little drug lords, you know.
And then Walgreens is holding back on selling the abortion pills. So, there's
Yeah, no,
Sasha
they need
Starr.
to. Yeah.
Timing. So,
Hello.
Sasha, tell us about Bakhmut. Zelensky is refusing to retreat. They're saying it's not really a strategic win for the Russians, more symbolic. Can you give us an update?
Well, what's happened is that Russians are using heavily the so-called Wagner Group, which is essentially a private army, officially forbidden in Russia, but nevertheless exists. And in fact, Putin supports it quite openly. And so what's happening is that they are putting a heavily armed men, probably their elite groups. And the idea is to kill and destroy as many Ukrainians as possible, regardless of losses of the Wagner Group, which is essentially part of Russian army, if you will. Right now, the latest what I've heard is the arithmetic of that is of losses is 5-1. For every 1 Ukrainian, there are 5 killed Wagner groups, people, Russians, or you can call it any way you want. But even that is not tolerable for Ukraine, and I'll tell you why. Because Ukraine doesn't have so much supply of so-called human meat, if that's what you call Russian forces. Ukraine is against that type of army. So the continuing defense of Bakhmut is more, I would say, not even strategic, more psychological, probably, actions than anything else. And of course, they want to show that they can resist much superior army groups because Russian army put everything what they've got, Wagner groups, the elite groups, all that they got it right over there in a very little territory of Bakhmut. It's becoming intolerable to see that nevertheless, even 1-5, but losing so many Ukrainians, it's a very, very heavy proposition, as much as it might be honorable and patriotic and so on. It's very, very heavy proposition. I don't know if, according to Zelensky, they should be able to withstand. I know that there are some counterattack are being prepared or so on. But see, here is what I will discuss it in my next Ukrainian program. I don't understand only one thing. Of course, the success of Ukraine heavily depends at this time of NATO and primarily of United States. But we don't understand the U.S. policy, whether they want long, several years of war as to weaken Russia considerably or so on, or they want a quick victory in this year, or they want something in between, let's see, for 2-3 years, whatever it is. We don't know that, and nobody knows that. And I don't know if U.S. itself knows what it wants. It's very difficult to coordinate the right strategy for Ukrainians to deal with this situation. They can start their offensive with a great effect, provided that they will bought all the weapons, probably April, May of this year. June is the latest. But so far it's unclear if that's what Americans want. It's unclear because if that's not what Americans want, they will talk Ukrainians not to start its offensive, not to provide all the needed ammunition and so on. So it's very, very difficult to read what U.S. wants, and this is a very important question in this juncture.
It's just,
What America wants.
Well, I mean, I think that it's just a tough call on U.S. foreign policy. The longer this war draws out, the more money it's going to cost America. But at the same time, I think they need to take a stand, really stand up to Russia. And I think it's always scary when you're dealing. I mean, the other thing we haven't talked about on the show, and I was going to open up with it this week, is an ever-changing world. I mean, think about it. You now have Russia and China, along with North Korea, is kind of like the new Axis powers, so to be. When you call them in World War II, the Axis powers.
Axis of evil.
Yes,
is what Reagan called it.
But they have more nuclear missile capabilities now on the U.S., and they're getting very aggressive. And then let's not forget Iran, right? And
No,
I
we won't
actually,
forget them.
and believe it or not, I actually agree with President Trump, believe it or not, former President Trump, that I don't think we should have been negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran. And I don't think we should be negotiating with any country that's developing a nuclear weapon, that's torturing and raping women in their own country. It's not about, it's a torturous regime. And the president of the United States, I don't even go maybe back to Obama. I mean, Trump, I got to give Donald Trump credit for coming in and saying, well, we got to stop this. And I really think Biden should have just said no more deals with Iran. Why are we wanting to go back in the nuclear deal? Of course,
Yeah,
it's
it's inconceivable.
See this day. I never ever thought I'd see this day. Good on you, Steve.
No, I mean, I do think Donald Trump had a good point there. I mean, I'm going to give him credit on that. And
He had many good points.
Yeah, but that one was
I do have some news for the audience. This was tipped off to me by the Honorable David M. Walker yesterday. There's a new party forming called the Unity Party. You can actually look it up on the internet. And what it is, it's a combination of Democrats and Republicans. They are tired of and really don't want to see this Biden versus Trump too. Okay, because there's no choice. You get this guy who's old and not even sure if his faculty is together versus a guy who can't tell the truth, So there's a possibility. I'm just saying. Now this is 2 years from now.
No, it can't. But it can't happen.
The Unity Party comes in and just rips the election away because it's really a vote against the two parties.
That's not going to happen.
Watch the movie Designated Survivor.
It's all about money, Dan. They've already raised.
Tajay, it can't happen.
It's going to hurt the Democrats more than the Republicans.
It's all about the money. And this group is getting some heavy funding, and if so, it could happen, because when you go to the polls and you see this as the vote, then there's a possibility that becomes the president. Okay, so watch for that in 2020, probably come up sometime this year.
No, but I think that the problem is
$100 million
it'd be nice to have a third party candidate, but the problem is that they just don't have the resources, the viability, the American primary system. It's
they just divide the vote is what they do.
That's not true. That's not true, Steve. Other countries have
There's
done
some big money behind this party, my friend.
Other countries.
Steve,
other countries have done it. There's a lot of money rolling around this country. I don't see any reason why that can't be done.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. In other words, it reminds me of the time that they said, well, retirement plans and the things won't change over here. The United States is set in their ways. That's absolutely not true.
Well, I mean, we saw it with Ross Perot, right?
People are fed up. The vast
Ross Perot had
and I think
with
Alabama
Lenora
right?
Falani. There have been a number of third-party candidates that have tried it from a number of
it's not
places. And I guess the question I've got is, are we not, and I'm just saying America in general, and particularly, definitely, are we not too much ingrained in the two-party system? I mean, I love the idea, and I would love to see some third-party disruption going on, but I just don't know if we have not gotten so bought into the whole Democrat versus Republican narrative that a third party is a viable option. Because, like I said, I hope that it is the case, but I just know that it has been tried a number of times on various sides. Because you just mentioned Ross Perot, I know that Lenora Fulani tried it. There have been a couple of others that tried it. Of course, we do have some strong
George Wallace, whatever his name was.
we have some strong
they-
third
they-
party candidates that have done decently well, and particularly on the local level. I mean, the Green Party has done well on local levels, no matter what people think
Yeah, but
about
never
them.
on a
The
presidential
Libertarians have done well, no matter what people think about them. But there have been some places that they have a stronghold in their area, and they're able to get enough votes to win on definitely a local level, and I would say in some cases a state level. But I'm just wondering about the national landscape, if it's going to happen in the national landscape in the next 5, 10 to 15 years. Like I said, I am hopeful that that would be the case.
You
But
know, Mark,
we
the
can,
media is
Russia,
changing.
I mean, not Russia, but we can even go back to like
Yeah.
Washington. There were some third party candidates in the Washington era, like George Washington and everything. But
Yeah,
there
but
was
he
only
wasn't a third party candidate.
Based
Yeah,
on
there was some in this era.
the world is changing. And
He wasn't a third party candidate. He was a Whig.
it is-
Exactly.
This is a very viable. Go look on the internet. Go look at these people. You're talking a very viable, strong financial party as opposed to an individual who is trying to win off their own cult of.
I think what you'll find interesting is if you see what happened in the Australian election, last election, where you saw a whole heap of independents, and as a result, one of the two main parties wasn't actually able to. That they lost all of their stronghold seats.
Yeah.
So you could see something like that happen
yeah,
with enough funding.
You know, there's nothing. Hey, look, several years ago, like a decade or so ago, no one would say Trump would ever become president of the United States. It was
Oh, yeah.
There's something about
Look what happened.
yesterday when I was watching, and this is just some observation. Yesterday when I was watching Mark Robinson give his Republican response, the thing that really jumped out at me was looking at it from the other side, right? Even though Josh Stein's a close friend of mine, I'm a North Carolinian in a rural area. I've lost my job. I'm not seeing the benefits. And then I see a person that's coming in saying, look, I'm not a politician. I am just a public servant. And my story is very compelling that I grew up poor, one of 8 children, all this stuff. It's almost like a Trumpian kind of populist message that I think really resonates with people. And honestly, I think that's going to be Josh Stein's biggest challenge, Nick, is that Stein now, even though I think he's great, looks like kind of this pretty boy, Dartmouth and Harvard guy that hasn't really gotten his hands dirty against this brawler that could be the first black. I mean, Mark Lee, what do you think? I think Robinson's dangerous.
No, I think Robinson definitely is dangerous. I mean, it'll be interesting because there is definitely a very strong Christian base here in North Carolina. Some people would say he has an evangelistic base and everything. And I know that Mark Roberts is going to play to that base and everything in that space. So definitely, I think that he is a very strong candidate and actually could possibly win. It'll be interesting to see how much.
Hey, you should vote for him, Mark.
It'll be interesting to see how much he disrupts the.
He's a brother. You need to vote for your brothers. I mean, you know.
Like I said, that you don't always, as Shaquille and others say, will let you know, you don't always vote for people that are just of the same skin color or everything. You also have to look at the issues and how they feel on the issues and how it fits in with my own thought patterns. And there are some things that he might say that I don't agree with. But I will be interested to see.
That's really funny, Mike, because
I will be interested to see what he does
2 years ago you told me the opposite about
to
why should
the African American churches, because a lot of the African American churches are historically going Democratic, and whether that is to their own detriment or not, there's been conversations about some of the folks that voted against certain rules around abortion and whether that was voting against their interests. And that is an argument that I've heard from some women politicians and women activists. So it'll be interesting to see when he goes to the churches, whether he can have the same kind of appeal that, say, a Reverend Barber does, because Reverend Barber definitely goes there and has a strong appeal and everything. But there are some very conservative churches here in Durham, and even though Durham is very much of a liberal town, there are some conservative churches in both here and in Raleigh. So I will be interested to see whether he picks up some key endorsements from them and if they deliver their congregations, because they deliver their congregations, and those congregations are mega churches that could definitely swing a lot of those.
Yeah, but churches are supposed to stay out of the politics, right?
They're supposed to, but they don't.
Well, well, there are some that do.
If you're implying that Mormons don't get involved in Utah politics, I've never been to Utah or Wyoming, but I would just find that hard to believe that they don't have some folks that are not involved in one way or another. But like I said, I've not been there, and I've never been a Mormon, so I'm not going to say that that is.
We can change that, Mark. We can change.
I had a very close friend that became a Mormon, so like I said, nice try, but that's not happening.
So, Mark, let me just, so I don't want to say it because I'm sitting here in the middle of an airport, but let me just ask you something. Are you suggesting then that the secularism that was brought about in this country by the French, that's not exactly the same sort of religious belief that controls government?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Being forced to not believe in anything?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Shaquille?
That's right, I'm not going to repeat it, I'm at the airport.
He talks about secularism brought over by the French, and whether that's been an influence in the way we view our political life.
I've already, well, I think I've answered that question before on several other shows, which I am not a big fan of what I call blind voting and everything in that nature. Because I do think
that doesn't have to do with
secular or Christian or a number of others that they
can we bring Leon
to the power groups and the special interest in all in that line. So that
Mark,
there are some secular groups that do that, and there are some Christian groups and other religious groups that do it. I've seen it among some of my Muslim brethren, as well as some of the folks that I know that practice Buddhism and some other kind of religion.
In voodoo, right?
Mark, can we bring Leon? He's been sitting back there for like 20 minutes.
Well, like I said, I was multitasking.
No, he said that he was just listening today.
Did he? I must have missed that.
Yeah. Mark, also send the live link. I've been getting emails and people haven't been getting the live link the last couple of days.
Yeah, I'll do that and everything. Sorry about that. And I was actually trying to get a gentleman on that was running for governor, but he's having hard times with his phone. So hopefully he'll join us shortly. But Shaquille, you'll be interested to know there is I want to say he's a Republican, but he is running as a strict independent. He's a transportation guy out of Sophia, North Carolina. But Richard Stanley, I've met on LinkedIn, and he wants to run to be governor of North Carolina. It's one of them long shot candidates that we're talking about. But in the first email I got from him, he said that he had to raise, I think it was like $2,000 in order to get registered in all of the ballots here in North Carolina. So he, like I said, I'm trying to get him to come on, but he says that he was interested in being the governor of North Carolina. And as Steve just put it, there are two strong candidates. So the fact, I don't think Richard Stanley stands much of a chance, but stranger things have happened.
Well, why do you think I'd be pleased about this?
Just because it's somebody that is outside of the political norm and is doing something that is determined to run despite the odds. That's why.
Yeah.
I'd like to remind everybody that in Canada, there are now for at least 50 years a three-party system. So we have equivalent of Republicans, which are Progressive Conservatives, Liberal Party, and NDP, it's a New Democratic Party. Okay? So
or socialists, yeah.
Yeah, sort of. And they never, ever getting more than, say, 20% of votes, most likely 12, 15. I think once they had 20, even 22 or something. So what's really happening here is that they are taking part of the electorate from conservatives, from liberals, and they're using that. They don't. I remember the debate.
Sounds like our squad.
I remember a time when Stephen Harper was still by far our best premier minister, and he had debate with liberal before next election, liberal and NDP leader. And when the question was to NDP leader, and he started to talk about his policies or something like that, and when they asked Harper to comment on that, Harper says, I envy the guy. He could say anything what he wants because there never be a time that he would have to deliver on his promises. So therefore, he's in a league of his own. He can say everything what he wants.
Well, we've just had a new prime minister elected last year.
Yeah.
7 out of 10 Australians voted for somebody else, but we've ended up with him anyway. And based on that incredible result, he has decided that he's got a mandate to change our superannuation fund, which is our equivalent of your pension fund rules. And they're trying to tell us that it's a modest change. Guess what the modest change is? They're doubling the tax rate. That's a modest change. You know, I'm sick and tired of being lied to, sorry.
So what should
Oh,
we
come on now.
That
That's the way the game is played.
in my
You should get used to being lied to. You're lied to every day.
What I'm saying is that this so-called third party, NDP, is not really in a position to govern, never, unless it's maybe some local level, maybe even as far as provincial level. Okay, they can win election or two, but federally, absolutely no chances. But they are making deals. Once election is over, let's see, nobody got the majority. So they're making a deal with either one party or the other, more often with liberals. They're making deals. That's why liberals, unfortunately, will rule for the next 235 years, simply because
they're the whores, right?
I mean, they always have a majority. Is that a fair system?
Like
is that a viable system? I don't think so.
Hey, Steve, I've got a question for you, but it's actually, I hope Nick pops back on as well. But I know we talked about technology and we talked about a couple of things with technology, but apparently technology may have caught somebody as well, because apparently the Google CEO, Mr. Pichai, is bemoaning the fact that his workforce is not as strong as it used to be, and they're saying that it could be facing a threat, the biggest threat that they've had in 25 years, and he is bemoaning the office ghost towns that are there because, you know, a lot of people didn't come back to work and everything. Apparently it was a tape that was recorded and obtained by CNBC, which where Pichai urged employees affected by his cloud office evolution to remember prime office real estate doesn't come cheap in its 5 largest locations, including San Francisco and New York. There are people, by the way, who routinely complain that they come in and there are big swaths of empty desks. It feels like a ghost town. It's just not a nice experience. So apparently he is under those pressures to get people back into the workforce.
I'm a firm believer of it. I mean, I sometimes I'm more productive on working in a hybrid environment where, you know, I'm a part of the firm, so I meet with clients, but we don't have an office anymore. And then when I'm at home, I'm either doing this or my political stuff. But I do like the fact of going somewhere else every day. I don't believe in working from home all day. I just don't think it's a good thing. You need some human interaction.
I hear what you say.
Well, you know, I trade. You know how lonely that is? I'm up all night by myself, looking at the computer screen.
Speaking of trading, that's what
I don't think I have any social issues.
But I find that I can pace myself. So when I get tired, I can take a quick nap and re-energize. I can take a quick break, and then I feel refreshed. And then rather than if you're in an office all day, how much productivity are you really getting in an 8-hour day if you're not in your own environment?
Shaquille and Sasha, both of y'all are in the investment space. So that's what I was getting ready to say, because they said that if you take away the Google search engine revenue, more than half of the group's $282 billion in annual revenue disappears. Subtract YouTube from the remainder, and what's left is essentially a mismatch of loss-making activity. So Google's hardware business, including its Pixel mobile phone, its Nest Home products, and its Fitbit, don't move the needle. So are we looking at the collapse of Google? Because apparently it's also about to begin shutting down its Stadia video game streaming division. And to add insult to injury, the YouTube boss, Susan Wojcicki, is stepping down. So does this mean that we're about to have the collapse?
I think the more interesting question is going to be what the result is of these congressional inquiries into censorship on tech platforms, which has been going on over the last week or so. I'll expand on that tomorrow when I'm in a bit more privacy.
So what's your thought, Nick? Are we good? Is Google about to collapse? You know, they are part of the powerful FANG and everything. So what's going on here?
Google has too much power, too much money, and the only way they're going to be limited is the antitrust suit against them and breaking them up. Because if you look at the market between Google and Microsoft, they basically control the search market. So you have two companies that control one particular market. How they let that happen, I don't know. But they did. And
Yeah, but that's where the antitrust suit could come, Nick, where they could force them to allow everybody to access that, or they could break up the companies.
Pull them down a little bit. We do have another interesting thing in the media, which is the Fox News, which was sued for $1.6 billion for defamation because they were arguing that they were saying that that one of the electronic voting systems wasn't working, and then after proof after proof after proof that it was working, they continually to mislead their.
Oh no!
That's not exactly how it works.
First of all, it's owned by Murdoch, some bloody Australian. They love to mislead the audience. They did routinely, and they rightfully got sued for $1.6 billion because all they do is lie. They're like CNN, but they lie from the right, and the right people don't want to acknowledge the fact that what the facts. And they don't want to go to court because then they're going to be exposed. So they're leaning heavily on the First Amendment. But we have freedom of speech to lie.
Being more than a bit unfair.
So that's not even Nick, that's not even the complaint. The complaint isn't that they lied. The complaint isn't that they lied. The complaint, no, it's not. I'm saying the complaint isn't that they lied. The complaint is that they allowed other people to make those claims, and they pushed those sorts of claims. It's not that it's the complaint that they specifically lied. And recently they said that the people working there, high profile people working there, that they caught them in with text messages and emails to each other saying how ridiculous the whole thing was. That's the allegation.
You can be an apologist for what they're doing.
I didn't apologize for anything. I just corrected your account.
The world of securities, these guys would all be fired. Okay, because you can't sit there and misrepresent your client. The SEC and FINRA put these people down. In the world of news,
are you kidding?
People go,
are you kidding me?
But Nick, hold on a second. Nick and Shaquille, I've got a question.
Nick, what are you even talking about? Have you read the financials? Have you read the financial reports of most companies?
Turn them off.
Well, hold on a second. But that's what I was going to say, because apparently the companies have actually gotten it because of a Securities and Exchange Commission rule. They have actually gotten the rule and the real value of executive compensation packages, and the Wall Street Journal just reported this. So since the rule's adoption last August, around 65 companies have reported compensation actually paid on their executives, accounting for a change in stock award value. And apparently they are saying there's an interesting study that the pay gap between the CEO and the worker has widened in the last 50 years.
Good.
So
As it should. Now, Nick, I'd like to know. You made the comment that companies don't lie in their financial reports. When was the last time you read a financial report?
Listen to this elitist from Australia. The elite should rule. See, that's the problem with America.
I never said that. I never said the elite should rule. I just said the pay gap should widen.
News alert to everybody. There's no mobility.
Nick, is that a problem? Because from 65 to 70, they said the average CEO at the top company in the U.S. earned 23 times that of a typical worker. By 1990, that was 74 times. In 2020, the average top CEO's actual realized compensation was more than 350 times that of the typical employee. So, I mean,
that sounds good to me.
Going too far in everything in the sense of
I think one, I think that sounds good to me, and two, maybe it hasn't gone far enough.
Not gone far enough. Listen to you. Listen to Mr. Elitist. And you're not even a trust baby. Where do you have the right to speak on stuff like this?
Well, you're a trust baby.
Well, it's just economic reality.
I'm surprised you're not agreeing with him.
I'm descended from royalty. Okay, so you can kiss the ring. There's the ring. Go ahead and kiss it.
Economic reality, Nick. So the reality is that you have a lot more people.
Even I can see this is wrong. You can't have such disparity and try to be a fair and balanced country. Some guy, the CEO of Norfolk Southern, pulling down $4 million a year in salary, $8 million in bonuses, and here's what he does to the people in Palatine, Ohio.
PBS president is pulling down $1.2 million.
Well, that was just that was a nice change of the subject. Coming back to the issue about the
We're talking about
you
CO.
have you have
looked at what the
a lot more workers.
makes.
You have a lot more workers.
Shaquille,
a lot
he makes
more
more than you do. This guy pulls $4 million in salary, $8 million bonuses, $12 million altogether every bloody year out of the economy. What do we have to show for it? We show for it a decimated. Decimated.
Let me respond, please.
And he
because
goes
I can't raise my
in, does
voice.
the typical, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys, you peasants. I'm so sorry, you peasants got destroyed by our trains, but I was trying to push the profits into my pocket," and that's how they think. So don't play the violins for these CEOs, guy.
Okay, can I respond now? Because that's twice now you've interjected to say the same rubbish, which was a complete change. It was a complete change of the subject. The conversation was,
out of control.
Nick, I can't talk over you because I'm at the airport, and if I raise my voice, everyone else is going to be disturbed. So just let me finish. The original complaint was that CEO pay is too high compared to the workers. You have substantially more workers today, so there is an increase in supply without necessarily an increase in demand. What you have is an increase in demand on CEOs. Okay, it's a much more competitive field to get up there. So of course things are going to go up. You've also had a massive increase in the US economy over the last 4 or 5 decades. So the idea that gap isn't going to increase is ridiculous. You want to be fair and balanced, stop interfering in the market.
Competitive pay my rear, okay? Forget that. It's who's willing to sell their soul to the company store. If you're willing to sell your soul,
sell my soul to the company store.
CEO. You sell your life, you sell your wife, you sell your next door neighbor, profit, it doesn't matter. And you call it, oh, it's competitive to become a CEO.
Well, I wouldn't.
It's competitive.
Well, I wouldn't sell my wife. I wouldn't sell my wife. But they're more entitled. No. When I have a wife, when I have a wife, I won't sell her. But I'm more entitled.
The movie Enron, the smartest guy in the room.
When I have a wife, I won't sell her. But they're more than welcome to my ex.
They'd rip your heart out for a profit. Go watch the movie Enron, the smartest guys in the room, and you'll see.
Nick,
they all end up in jail. What are you talking
Nick,
about?
hold on a second, because guess what one of the fastest growing industries is right now?
Nick,
hold on a second. Because actually, Shaquille is actually involved in that industry right now.
Where
He's located.
You make the comment about selling.
So the fastest growing industry, because they apparently can't hire people fast enough, is the hospitality industry. So following a huge loss in the workforce during the pandemic, hospitality is bouncing back, quickly becoming the country's most prolific employer. So tech and finance firms are laying off folks by the thousands, but apparently bars, hotels, and restaurants can't hire fast enough. And now we've been complaining about some of the restaurants that are saying that they can't find enough employees, but apparently they can't hire enough now. And matter of fact, Chipotle recently announced that it was planning to hire some 15,000 extra workers, while Kroger's is turning to former staff to meet demand. So the hiring rate of that industry is also putting the U.S. employment rate down to a 53-year low. So hospitality, along with healthcare, have added 207,000 workers in the first month of the year. So nearly half of the January private sector gains came from that part of the world. So I know earlier we were complaining that hospitality couldn't hire enough people, but apparently now hospitality can't. They got like more jobs than they have folks that want the jobs.
Yeah, well, they're pawns in the chess game. But let's look at the kings, queens, bishops, and the powerful people. If you haven't seen the movie Enron, Smartest Guys in the Room, it's available on Netflix, Amazon. You got to watch that.
Enron failed 20 years ago.
It did, but the principles remind.
Well, that was the day of Bill Clinton lining his ass off and everything else. He set the theme.
Right? You can talk about all you want.
Enron,
okay.
Those guys ended up in jail.
Let's go to one that failed today. You probably heard of it. There we go. We'll put it on here so you.
Well, but Enron, all the principles were in
jail. How about FTX?
Yeah, but he's a crook too.
That was the cryptocurrency failure.
Yeah, he's a crook.
No, that was going to fail. That was the crypto. But
Shaquille,
quick question. Because with the hospitality raising, there's jobs coming in. They're also saying that they need to raise the pay and the benefits, coming back to the common worker, not the
Called
executive worker.
capitalist
So are we going to see that
Yeah, I
push
know,
for
but he gave
$20
hundreds of
now
millions of
by
dollars
the
to the
hospitality workers,
Democrats.
and will it be effective? Because that's the other counter push,
He was
is
just
that
your puppet.
because they have the demand now, will that push the prices up?
Okay, well, firstly, let me actually respond because I'm at an airport and I can't talk over you guys as I usually would.
Oh, we love it. We got an advantage. We got an advantage over Shaquille and Kip.
Anybody's short
So-
years.
Mark, we
So
should have
firstly-
driven to the airport and done the show from the Charlotte airport with Shaquille live. Next time.
Well, let's see if Shaquille's response.
So firstly, back to the comment Nick made before. Well, yes, I wouldn't sell my future wife to the corporation, but they're more than welcome to have my ex. I'll sell that. I'll sell her quite cheap.
Yeah.
Um, Now, as for your comments about all of these, recent failures, what about the thousands and thousands of successes? What about the tens of thousands of people that act ethically? You just want to focus on the failures. How I prefer to focus on the successes. And as for you, Mark, there's a reason why there's upward pressure on wages and upward inflation. There's a reason for that. So that's what you wanted, right? There's more demand, less supply. The prices go up. Like I'm not coming up with some brand new economic theory.
No. And somebody has to employ the people, right? And that's why.
Oh yeah. There was another company that. Oh wait, Purdue. It was selling oxycodone all over the country, resulting in 100,000 deaths a year. We shouldn't talk about that because they employed a lot of people, didn't
No,
they?
you can list all those companies, but how about you go through the Russell
We should
2000 and name the other 2,000 companies that haven't
on
been?
Republicans. Let's worship the Purdue company.
I don't think
because
the Republicans are worshiping.
they employed a lot of people by
The
selling
Democrats were covering
oxycodone all
them,
over the
and
place.
Purdue is giving as much to the Democrats as the Republicans.
Well, blame both parties. I don't.
Yeah, I will.
The thing is, if you
Hey,
sit
and
there-
Sasha and
you sit
Shaquille,
there
I
and
do have
say, hey,
another
the CEO
economic
got
question
paid
that I was
well,
going to ask.
and we should respect the CEOs. They work their way
No.
to the top. Let's go look
Speaking
at
of
Purdue.
CEO, Sasha and Shaquille, I did have another question about another industry. You heard me ask about Google, and I'm not doing stock. I probably should be doing stock. But is Tesla in trouble? Because apparently Tesla has announced another price cut to two of its most popular models, and they're saying that the Model 5 sedan is selling for $5,000 less, and the Model X SUV is going for $10,000 less. And so that is an electric vehicle company. I know a lot of people were very excited about electric vehicles and all of that.
But once again,
Mark,
Mark, once again, this is not some brand new economic theory that I just came up with in the last day. It's normal supply and demand. Of course, Tesla's
Right.
going to drop its prices. There's a greater supply of electric vehicles in the market than what there was when Tesla first started. So of course they have to be competitive by reducing their prices.
Yeah, I
So we don't
think we are talking about all electric vehicle market as a whole, and I'm following some of their stocks. For example, like this stock NIO. It's a Chinese electric vehicle company. Many others, and although they're increasing production, the production is going higher and higher, but their numbers still don't make any sense. They're still showing losses, and there is no foreseeable future. There is no way that they will ever become profitable. Maybe someday, maybe in 15 years and 35 years, or who knows? But right now, in next year, 3 years, 5 years, there is no visibility of them becoming profitable. So it's becoming like a crapshoot. You just buy a stock and you hope that it will move higher and you will sell. There is no no fundamentals in which any investor should look at their stock. Even Tesla is doing extremely well because they became number one car seller, not just electric, but any car seller in California. So that's quite an achievement. That shows.
Not organically. That was because somebody said you must buy these. I think that might have something to do with it. But Sasha, let me ask you: when I finish in New York tomorrow, should I come up to Toronto and go to the casino with you? Is that what you're suggesting would be a better plan than buying Neo?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so that's where we are with.
Or you could fly back to Utah.
I don't have time. I've got to go to Dubai and then come back.
Shaquille, I would recommend you to fly to Toronto as late as possible in your trip, so the weather will be better, warmer, and more hospitable.
I must say the weather here in Charlotte, at least inside the airport, is a lot warmer than what I've been getting in California. California was actually really cold.
Yeah.
Yep, it's getting
New
cold.
York
It's
is
gonna
supposed
look
to be
about
quite
spring,
cold,
like
so
it's like 70.
It's going
I'm
to
going
get
to be at
cold this
United.
week.
I'll be at the United Nations this afternoon, so hopefully the weather will be a little bit nicer there. Then I'll be over in Dubai, and then I'll make my way back to the US.
Are you going to be? If is Alexandria Cortez in the district? Maybe you could meet her for a cup of coffee.
I'm going to run and hide.
I'm just joking.
You're gonna run and hide, so she might.
I'd
She
love
might
to
look
see
at
Dan.
you.
I'd love to see Dan Worthington meet AOC.
Oh,
So I
jeez.
I was gonna actually get a helicopter
I'm too
to
old
take
for
me from
that.
the airport to New York
He's
City
so old for that.
to try and save some time.
Aren't she's getting
But
married soon?
apparently you can't do that
To a
because
man or a woman?
you
To a
can't.
woman, a man.
Oh,
Yeah, she's been with her
by the way,
significant other
my
for a minute.
condolences.
A real man, or
Oh, by the way, you can't. In my social media,
Dan, you'll be quite
you have to go through-
disappointed. Yes, he is. He
You have to
is,
go-
but a very, very low testosterone one.
oh, hey.
yeah,
I
We
heard
have to,
AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene are getting together for dinner and creating their new party.
Food fight.
Are they gonna have their own party?
I don't know. Hey, but
folks, I'm
Tesla.
going to close out
Tesla-
early. I'm going to close out early. I've got to run, but it's been a wonderful show. We'll be back tomorrow to continue our discussion. We talked a little bit about the presidential politics as we're getting closer to the primaries coming up. People getting out there. Nikki Haley, rumors about Mike Pence jumping in.
That'd be
I
I think
Right.
Nikki Haley's going for a VP position, Steve.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
what I think.
And I think Joe
I
Biden.
think Pence isn't.
Yeah.
he ain't going
prediction
for
is-
anything, Dan.
I do believe Donald Trump will be the nominee again. And I think a lot of these races will be, even in North Carolina. I mean, it was interesting watching Mark Robinson yesterday talking about the economy, rising prices, inflation, talking those economic issues, saying that the Democratic policies haven't worked, even though Governor Roy Cooper, I think, has done a good job investing in North Carolina. And the big news
Oh, you
of the day,
would.
but the big news of the day in North Carolina, and a real shout out to both the Republicans and Democrats, is North Carolina becomes the 40th state in the United States to expand Medicaid. So this is a big deal. It adds about $2 billion to the budget, and it's going to provide the ability for access for preventive care, healthcare tests, provide healthcare to about 100,000 low-income families, many with special needs, and 14,000 veterans. So I think this was good
Steve,
news.
sorry, I don't want to be a smartass, but did you say you're the 40th to do it? You're a bit slow to adopt this, then, isn't it? Why is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing that you're 40th?
It's bad. Took us a long time.
Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to be clever.
Well,
I
except
just
if you're a
wasn't quite sure what you were
Republican, it's
saying.
But
actually
the second, only the second
Steve,
state in the
Steve,
Southeast.
Let's get real. Here's what really happened here. The stupid Republican Party here goes, we don't like Medicaid because it benefits poor people, because they don't want to benefit the elite. We got that.
Really? Is that what they said?
What they did is they slowed the progress of Medicaid coming down, because remember, Medicaid benefits poor people.
Well, but
and
remember,
we don't want to
Medicare and
benefit
Medicaid
poor
are going
people. We
broke.
only want to benefit the rich.
You know, there's a
And
reason
they
for
think
that,
that
right?
CO pay is high, even though all they do is rob
Okay,
people.
so what's happening to
that's what
Medicare and
happened here in North
Medicaid?
Carolina.
Nick?
And
What's
Yeah,
happening
that
to
sounds-
Medicare and Medicaid, Nick?
Nick, what you've just described sounds fantastic. Maybe I should move here.
What is happening to Medicare and Medicaid right now?
Well, Medicare's gone broke. We've gone over that, Dan.
Yeah, exactly
Medicare is
my
going
point. Medicaid
Medicare
is
will go
the
broke
same
too.
thing. Okay.
Right.
Right. So why would you be in favor of increasing Medicare benefits
Because
at this point?
the money has already been allocated. In other words, it's like this: either North Carolina takes the money, or they give it back to the federal government, who will then, of course, squander it. to
No,
other
take it.
places like Utah.
Take it.
Oh yeah,
No,
take
take
it.
it. Take it
the
all.
money. But the Republicans, in their stupid mind here, go, well, we don't want to take the money because we're against Medicaid. Fine, go to Washington, D.C., but don't sit there and make the poor people here in North Carolina suffer. So they finally figured it out. It took them a long time because they're slow.
Well, let's just make it go
They're
broke
slow
sooner,
people,
right?
and they listen to Fox News. That's the reason it took so long here. So just
So
tell it
let's-
how it is.
let's
Nick, I
just-
tell you, it sounds,
Oh, I
it
just
sounds
did.
fantastic. It sounds fantastic. Maybe I
You're
should try and move
politician.
to North Carolina, right? It sounds
I mean,
great what
you
you've
should
described.
check. I mean, you know, except
Look,
so if you're a
Steve has to be nice to
multi-millionaire,
both
so
parties.
Right, you're safe. I'm
Well,
not a
folks,
citizen.
it's
so
that
you're safe.
time. I gotta go. Gotta do the work of the people. Thank you all so much.
Work of the people.
Be safe. And remember, we didn't do the Women's History Month. Tomorrow's International Women's History Day. So we'll be talking about women, and we'll be talking about other things. Okay.
Well, on that, that's the reason I'm attending the United Nations. You'll be very pleased to know, and that's the reason I'm going to Dubai. You'll be very pleased to know, because I know many of you think that I don't support these things. I'm actually going to the United Nations specifically.
I think you support it. I support it. It's great.
Oh, I definitely support it.
Good job. All right, guys. Thank you.
See you later. God bless.
And don't forget to go check out Sasha's Russia-Ukraine show. And also we'll have later on in the Thursday, even though I'm doing the pre-recording, Disability Advocacy, that being Win Charles. But that show will air on Thursday at 11. But right now, Sasha is about to do his show. He did not close it out, so I guess we'll close it out. So let me go ahead and get that done. Shaquille, so there we go.